let's get started. It's 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roxy Farrow, and I'm with the Human Trafficking Legal Center. I serve as the operations manager, as well as the survivor leadership program lead here at the Human Trafficking Legal Center. So as you all know, we've been doing multiple webinars on survivor leadership and resources, as well as legal resources to assist survivors in enhancing a form of community with each other, as well as other service providers and advocates. And so today, for our next series in survivor leadership in the workplace, we are going to be discussing psychological safety in the workplace for survivors. So without any further ado, we will get right into the subject matter. However, before we begin and our panelists introduce themselves, I would like to take a few moments just to speak about our partner, Survivor Alliance. Survivor Alliance is a survivor-led organization that is ran by survivors for survivors. So if you are a survivor or a survivor leader who's interested in being a part of a community and or gathering more information, education around survivor leadership, that's a great resource. And I will put the website information in the chat. Today, we have Wilnisha Sutton, as well as Janice Naranjo. Please correct me if I'm saying that wrong. And I'm gonna go ahead and let them tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we'll start.
Okay, hello everyone, I'm Wilnisha Sutton. I'm a survivor leader. I am a part of the Maryland Network for Survivors. Honored to be here today with you all. I am a survivor leader, lived experience expert. I'm originally from San Diego, California. Woo woo. Now living in Maryland, working in DC. I've been a case manager for many years now, and just love the work that I do. I'm just honored to be able to serve in this capacity, in this community, to be able to show other survivors like, hey, if I can do this work and change my life, you can definitely do the same. Just honored to be here with you all today and to have this very important conversation with my friends, Janice and Roxy. Just an honor to be on this platform with them as well. That's a little bit about myself.
My name is Janice Naranjo. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Like Wilnisha said, we used to work together. I am currently in San Diego, California. So for me, it's good morning. For anyone else who's morning. A little bit about myself is I have my Master's of Arts in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. So long story short, that means I'm a therapist. So I'm a clinician at heart. I also am a manager of a program here in San Diego called STARS, and we work with survivors of human trafficking. And so I kind of have a little bit of experience working with survivors, not only as a clinician and doing that client therapist work, but also as a manager and helping lead and manage a team in which I also have survivors on my team. So me and Wilnisha met at that program in that center. And so I'm very, very excited to be here and alongside.
Great. So I'll let you all share your screen so that we can share PowerPoint, just so everyone can have a visual and follow along with our discussion today.
Can everyone see that okay?
If you can, if everyone can see clearly the PowerPoint, please answer in the chat box. If not, we'll definitely make provisions or accommodations. Great, we're getting a yes. So we're great.
So I'll kind of just start the conversation. Again, feel free to ask questions, and Roxy, just feel free to like pause me or anything. If I'm going too fast, I apologize, I'm a fast speaker, but feel free to slow me down. And so this is just to kind of be a visual as to our conversation. It's a guide for our conversation, but not in place of our conversation. And so please feel free to ask questions as we go and stop me. So let's see here. Okay. So I first kind of want to talk a little bit about what psychological safety is. And so clinically, it's defined as being able to show up and employ oneself without fear of negative consequences of self-image, status, or career. And so long story short, that means we're able to really fully show up as ourselves and feel that we are accepted and respected in our teams. And so that looks a little bit different from trust, right? So trust is something that I give to someone else, right? So I trust Wilnisha that I can give information to Wilnisha and that she'll give me the benefit of the doubt. Psychological safety is where your teams give you the benefit of the doubt and you feel safe within that team, right? So trust is something you give to someone else, and that psychological safety is something that is cultivated and created by a team and that you feel safe within. So how this looks in the workplace is psychological safety is a shared belief held by members of a team, and that the team will not embarrass, reject, or punish you for speaking up. And so when there's psychological safety in a workplace, people feel comfortable being themselves, right? They feel like they're able to bring their full selves into work and that they feel okay laying everything on the line without repercussions, right? So when we feel safe in a workplace environment, that may manifest itself in that we feel safe giving feedback. We feel safe being vulnerable. We feel safe being able to say, hey, I made a mistake. We also feel safe sharing our accomplishments or sharing highlights of our day or highlights with our clients, right? So it kind of encompasses all that safety where we really feel safe fully showing up. And so why is that important? So when a team climate is characterized by that trust and mutual respect, members feel free to collaborate, they feel safe taking risks, providing feedback, and that ultimately enables them to implement innovation, right? And so any one of us who is in that kind of manager role or owns a business or anything like that, right? Innovation is really important, right? Within innovation, we're able to move forward, right? And not stay on that like stagnation that everything is the same, right? And so we want to create a team climate that does have that trust and respect, that does have that psychological safety so that we can innovate and that way we can move forward. So within a workplace that does have that psychological safety, it starts with the feeling of belonging. Those of us who are aware or know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it states that all humans require that their basic needs be met before they reach their full potential. On the foundation of the hierarchy of needs is a sense of belonging, connection, and love, right? And so without that basic need being met, we don't feel safe to be our full selves, right? Or feel accepted or move forward and reach our fullest potential. And so when employees feel accepted, they're able to fully be themselves and improve their organizations. So there's 4 different stages, and I won't get into too much, but without all 4 or going through all 4, better said, is when you create that psychologically safe workplace. And so inclusion safety is that feeling of feeling included, right? I feel safe, I feel I'm part of this team. A learner safety is that I feel safe learning from my team or learning within the environment. Contributor safety is I feel safe contributing to my team, right? So not only do I learn, I feel safe contributing and others learning from me. And challenger safety is that I feel safe being challenged and giving challenge, right? And so that's important as well. And so with all those 4 is where we really create that atmosphere where everyone is able to show up and feel psychologically safe and improve organizations. So building a safe work environment with survivors. So by providing, by providing a psychologically safe safety in the workplace, we can create a team that feels safe and where the members of the team feel empowered. And I bolded and italicized both those words because working with survivors, those are 2 very important things to create and to cultivate, is that sense of safety and empowerment. And so with this empowerment, it increases our team and our team members' self-efficacy, that feeling that we're able to do things that we're tasked with, right? I feel not only motivated, but capable, and that my team and my managers, they feel that I am capable and worthy and able to as well. And so with that self-efficacy, it allows trust to be a 2-way street. And this is really important to me. Management I provide trust to the team members, and therefore the team members can also trust me. And so ultimately, this is a 2-way street, right? And so ultimately, this creates a safe working relationship. And because it is a team, every member of the team is needed to create and maintain this safety, right? We're all part of this. So some strategies to building and creating psychological safety. Rapport building is my number one. And this takes time. I think sometimes we want to kind of hurry it up or think that, hey, we're good people. People should trust us, right? But that takes time, right? And so I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind when we're rapport building, not only with managers, but also with our team members, right? That takes time. Team building questions and activities. And so some of these questions might look like, you know, what's everybody's favorite food, or what's everybody's favorite song? What's your hype up song? What is the origin of your name? Or like, would you change your name if you had a chance to, right? Things like that to kind of really get to know each other. Icebreakers, again, some of those like silly questions. I've asked questions in my team meetings every time. Some of them are like, if you can explore the depths of the ocean or the universe, which one would you do and why, right? And so it just gets us to like talk about things that are not work related and get to know each other on a more personal level, right? Sharing with others why this work is important to you. One of my favorite questions is, what fuels you? What got you into this? What keeps you going? Because when you are working in a team where we're all passionate and we're all fueled by the same things, this is one of those questions and one of those conversations that really connects us, right? And when we're really able to know what fuels one another, we're more able to give each other the benefit of the doubt, right? We're able to create that sense of safety in that team, that like if somebody does make a mistake or says something that maybe we didn't take too well, right? When we know what fuels one another, we're able to really give each other the benefit of the doubt. Empowering and supporting our team members. This is really important. We all have bad days. We all burn out. And so it's important to create a team in which we empower and we support our team members. Hey, do you need help? Or like, hey, while you go file that, I'll make this copy for you. Don't worry about it, right? Being really able to create that team atmosphere that my team has my back, right? And empowerment. Very important again, right? Wilnisha, you got this. Like, go out there, you're going to advocate, do the thing, right? So really being able to provide those words of affirmation and that empowering voice. Listening and accepting non-judgmentally. We all have stories. We all have backgrounds of some sort, right? And so when we are able to listen to one another and accept one another non-judgmentally, I don't got to agree with you, right? But I can accept your opinion and I can accept your story, right? And so really being able to listen and accept one another without judgment and just on the basis of like, this is you, right? Really allows for us to really show up and be ourselves without feeling that we're going to be rejected. Creating team rules. Sometimes it's really nice to have a team and the first thing y'all talk about is like some boundaries within each other or some motivations between each other or some rules, right? One of my favorites is like take space, give space. And so some of us are able to really take up space and talk and share all our stories and be really in it. And some of us are more on the background and we like to listen and observe, right? And so it's really important to, when we are taking up space, to also recognize to give space to others. Give space to those people who are there observing and listening, right? And see like, hey, what about you? Like, what do you think, right? And so really being able to create those rules to cultivate a team that feels safe. Express gratitude. This is, I mean, Wilnisha knows me pretty well. I love gratitude. I'm always into being gracious and looking at the bright side of like what I do have. And so being able to express gratitude to your team members is also very, very important, right? Like if Wilnisha does something for me being able to go the next day and be like, hey girl, thanks for doing that for me. Leaving a note on somebody's desk goes a far way. Like, you're amazing. Thank you so much. And really being able to like, even on team meetings, sometimes I start with questions of like, what are you gracious for today, right? And everybody just being able to be in that space of gratitude very from the beginning, but also what is something about this team that you're gracious about, right? Doing shout outs to one another. Like, let me shout somebody out and say like, thanks for doing that thing. I saw you do it in that Rise Court meeting and like, that was amazing, right? And just really being able to cultivate that sense of gratitude.
Janice, remember we had the whiteboard in the back of the office and we put each other's names on the whiteboard and then we will write in different colors, like different things that we appreciated about each other. And that was just so helpful just to see, like, you would come into the workspace one day and then you see something new about you. You're like, okay, like, you know, it fuels you because this work is heavy. So it was just really, it was very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I do remember that. And it's true, right? Like being able to come into the workday in the morning, like, you know, pre-COVID, y'all, but
Right.
being able to come into the workplace and on that whiteboard, like I didn't have maybe a quote, or maybe I only had one and now I got two. And then, you know, like we used to not sign like who said something too.
Yeah.
So I would know by like handwriting sometimes, but like, it's just nice to come into the workday and just be like, oh, wow, like someone appreciates me, or somebody was thinking of me. Somebody wanted to put something nice and positive on the board about me. And so expressing that gratitude goes a really long way, right?
It does.
And these are all like things that we do. This is free, right? This doesn't take, you know, money or much time out of our day. Like this is free stuff that we get to do, and we get to like empower one another and pour love into one another, right? Because the work is heavy.
Yes.
Thanks for reminding me of that. That's beautiful. Embracing our differences and mistakes. I put mistakes in quotations because mistakes are learning lessons to me and learning opportunities, but embracing our differences. We all have different stories, different backgrounds, and in that diversity, in those uniqueness, that is where growth happens, right? If everybody was the same and we all had the same experiences, we would not be growing, right? And so being able to recognize that somebody's different, or their story is different, or their experience is different, and embrace that with love and with like this curiosity, like how can I listen or take in this story or take in this experience and embrace it and be curious about how I could apply that to my life, if at all, right? And then embracing our mistakes. When somebody comes into work and they express a mistake that they made, or maybe think something didn't go so well, maybe they're having a hard day in their personal life, being able to embrace that too. These are learning opportunities, right? And these are moments when we get to take a step back, and maybe it's a mistake that I made, but maybe it wasn't really on me, right? Maybe there's something managerial that needs to change, or structurally that has to change. But without those mistakes, we won't know, right? And so really being able to embrace mistakes is really important as well. So a little personal journey of mine to trauma-informed care, and I shared a little bit about this in the beginning. So I have my Master's of Arts in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, again, very long for me being a mental health therapist, registered with the board as an associate clinical counselor. What that means is that I'm under somebody else's license until I get licensed. But good story is that I got approved for my hours today, so I should be shortly licensed. I'm very excited about that. That takes some time, so I'm very excited. It's a good day. So I have worked with survivors in multiple contexts, again, as a therapist, as a fellow employee, and as a manager. And I like to think about like textbook information is one thing, but when that's coupled with like real experience and real feedback from our survivors and employees, that's where like the real growth is, right? I would not have grown to where I'm at right now, and I still have ways to go without people telling me like, hey, I didn't like when you said it like that. Can you use this word instead? Or like, hey, you know, that word kind of triggers me. I actually don't like when people say that. Can we not do that? You know, and being able to collaborate with one another, like, oh, absolutely. Like if my intention of what I'm trying to say is not hitting home for you, let me change that, because I want to make sure communication is not complete unless I say something and you accept it and understand it with my intention, right? That goes both ways. And so if I'm communicating and it's not being accepted or reciprocated in the way that I intended, I want to change that, right? And so without that feedback, I would not grow and we would not grow. And so we need the feedback, and that's how we grow as a team, as individuals. And so I always keep a very like open door policy or open Zoom phone policy these days with COVID. But you can call me whenever. If I'm not available, I'll let you know when I am. Or like if I can't answer in that moment, like, hey, can you go to this person because I'm not able to? But I love feedback. I think it's the way that we're able to really communicate and foster and cultivate that like innovation that we talked about in the beginning. Not only innovation with the organization, innovation within myself as well, right? Within a team, within a culture. And so I welcome feedback very wholeheartedly. What I've learned is a lot of what I presented, but what I've learned overall is that we're all very unique, right? And so even within survivors, each survivor is unique. Every survivor's story is different. Every survivor's experience and situation is different. Everybody's triggers are different, right? And so being able to really get to know and build rapport, not only with my team, but with my team members is really important. And so I take a very therapeutic approach in the way that I manage overall, but like, I think it's really important to build rapport with my staff individually. And so coming onto a team that was already well established, I wanted to meet with everyone individually. I wanted to ask them what fuels you. I wanted to ask them like, hey, is there anything that I need to know regarding my role and regarding your role? How can I support you? Any words you don't like me to say? If I want to check in with you, should I use check-in? Should I say like, hey, can you come in? Like, what do I use? What should I do? And I also asked, like, if I provide feedback, how would you like that feedback to be given? Or how, like, is it over the phone? Do you rather an email? Do you rather a Zoom meeting? And do you rather somebody else, right? Sometimes we like to have another person involved in that conversation, another manager, another director, etc. And so I think really asking these questions, not being afraid of asking these questions, and being able to create collaboratively with our staff members the relationship that we hope to have, right? I also like to say I am going to make mistakes. I am human as well, right? I expect all of us to make mistakes. Again, that's how we grow. And so when you make a mistake or when I make a mistake, how comfortable do you feel sharing it with me? How comfortable do you feel giving me feedback, right? Some of us, we invite people to say like, hey, give me feedback whenever. Some of us are not comfortable with that. We've had leaders who weren't very comfortable accepting feedback, right? So I may come in and be like, give me all the feedback. And they're like, I don't know, somebody told me that before and that didn't go so well, right? And so I want to ask that question too, like, do you feel comfortable giving me feedback? And in what manner would that feel most comfortable? Would you rather give me feedback over email? Would you rather call me? Would you rather do a Zoom meeting, right? And so really being able to collaborate with your members is really vital, right? And so overall, what I've learned is transparency, honesty, loyalty goes a really far and long way. And so that's my long-winded story. Before we go into questions, I know, Wilnisha, you wanted to share some stuff, but I do want to put my contact info there. I can also put it in the chat a little bit later. But please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm excited to see what questions come up.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Janice, for breaking that all down and making it clear as day. I guess psychological safety for a survivor leader, for me, it just looks like a space where I think we're like the mission statements that we set for our nonprofits is what we practice within, you know, the agency. Like we show space and grace for those that are working for the clients, right? And especially with survivor leaders, because we have unique journeys and unique stories as well. So it just looks like a space where I'm able to show up and authentically be myself, of course, professionally, but also know that folks, like you said, Janice, are going to have my back. Like they're not going to come at me, but come to me and understand that I'm going to make mistakes and that I might be re-triggered. We all will, even if you're not survivors, you're going to get vicarious trauma. You're going to be re-triggered. We all have been through traumatic things in our life, not just survivors. So just understanding that if someone is triggered and maybe they won't speak about it, that, you know, we show grace for them. It also looks like a space where I'm able to come to my leader and my manager and let them know like, hey, I'm having a tough day today. And it's not looked at as like I'm being lazy or I'm trying to escape work, but just being transparent. Like maybe I had a tough client. I know one time I was working with a client and I've been doing a lot of healing. I've done a lot of work on myself, a lot of therapy, a lot of self-love, a lot of things. And a client was talking about when they had been raped. And I had forgot that I had been raped in the past before. And then it came up and I was like, oh crap. Like, so I had to work and deal through that as I'm still working as a survivor. So it was pretty tough to navigate through that. But because I had a great team, I was able to like reach out to one of, you know, my fellow members and talk that out and get that support. So having support is vital as well. Knowing that survivor leaders working in certain spaces, we're going to have unique experiences. And I think that needs to be welcomed and it needs to be honored because we bring something to the table that other folks don't bring to the table. I like to say, like, I don't have a PhD from a school, but I have a PhD in the life. Like I have a PhD as a survivor. So knowing that what we bring to the table is invaluable. I think we have a few questions.
Yes, I'll just read some of them.
Okay.
Let's start with some questions, and I'll have some things to actually add in, and we have some polls for everyone who's attending. So
Nice.
the first question, I believe this was for you, Janice, is as a survivor, as Wilnisha mentioned, we all have our days, we all may be re-traumatized within the work environment. If you are a survivor and you are triggered in the work environment, what are some ways that survivors can help themselves? And what are some ways organizations can kind of foster a culture that creates a space where that's okay without them getting blamed or bullied or just completely disregarded? What are some things that can happen?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I think I'll start with the first part of that question, which is like what we can do for ourselves, right? And so I think, like Wilnisha was saying, is that we all have trauma, right? We all have stories, and as survivors, especially when we're working really closely with other survivors, right, or other people going through it, right? It could be really re-triggering. And so in those moments, I think it's really important to first recognize what is triggering us, right? We can't do anything unless we know, right? Or we identify. A lot of times they say the first part of solving a problem is identifying the problem, right? And so being able to identify what the trigger is, I think is really important. If you can't do that, or we're already past that, right? Like we're already anxious, we're already heated, our hearts are going, we're sweating, we're nervous, we're scared. We all have those experiences, right? And so I think if I'm in crisis, or we have, somebody's in crisis or feeling all those things in the moment, I think one of the most important parts is like noticing like what needs attention, right? Is it my heart? Is it my chest? Is it my breath? Is it my sweat or my skin, right? Like what is it that needs attention, and how do I cater to that? And so if it is my heart, and it is that my heart is racing, do I need to take a deep breath? Do I need to take a couple soft breaths, right? Do I need to get ice or get something cold and put it behind me so I could like slow my heart rate down, right? If it is my breath and I'm breathing too fast or too slow, do I need to pay attention to my breath? Do I need to take a couple, closed eyes breaths? Do I need to deep breath, couple 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, so I can get back into myself, into my core, right? If it's my skin and I'm sweating, do I need to go into a colder room, take off my sweater? What is it that I need to do to cater to the physical things that is happening within me when I'm triggered, right?
Yes.
And I think the other thing is when it comes to the thoughts, or those thoughts that come in, right, that aren't always welcomed when we're triggered, right? Do I need to talk that out with somebody else? Do I need to write it down? And so I really like to think of when we are trying to cope, we need to pay attention to what is it that needs coping, right? Is it my thoughts? Is it my physical body? And recognizing, right, that what's triggering us isn't about the client, right? Because sometimes we could be like, I can't work with this client anymore because they triggered me, right? The trigger itself wasn't what the client's going through, but what we have gone through, right? And so really being able to separate that, I think, is also vital. And talking that out with safe people, right? So this goes into that question about the organization, how the organization and our teams can really help foster that, foster us to grow in that moment, but also to help calm us down. So having safe people, right? You're not going to like everybody on your team, right? But you may like one or two, or you may have one or two people that you really feel like you can go to. Me and Wilnisha have had countless conversations about being triggered in the workplace and being able to talk to one another because we felt safe with one another. Maybe I didn't feel safe going to everyone else, but I knew I had Wilnisha, right? And so I would go to her, right? How many times, Wilnisha, would I come in and be like, I just need a hug.
Yes.
I just need a hug.
Yes.
And she would just give me a warm embrace, right? And that's what I needed in that moment. And so being able to cultivate a team where you can identify your people, where you can identify your person, or that you have somebody to call, right? We all need that. I always think like if we were meant to live alone and be alone, we would have all been born one by one, but we were born by the plenty. That's for me a sign, and like tells me we need each other, right? We need our society, our social support. We need our people, right? So being able to find your tribe and in your team is also really, really important.
Yeah, we all. Oh, go ahead, Jake.
I'm sorry, let me chime in here because the questions are starting to roll in, and people are really enjoying what you all have to say about psychological safety in the workplace. So before we move any further, let's just address some of these questions. So the first one is from someone stating they're really interested in changing the mindset and policies in organizations who have survivor colleagues. what are some suggestions? This is a great question.
It is.
No, because what I'm noticing is that, and we all want this within the anti-trafficking community, that the notion of survivor leadership, survivor inclusion, more and more survivors are being invited to organizations to engage, to work, and it presents for a really positive experience, both for the survivor leader as well as the organizations. We also have a dominant culture that also perpetuates some pretty harmful tactics within the workplace.
Yes.
So we all know that change takes time. We all know that it takes, for your mindset to change, just as an individual, it takes time. And we have to focus on one thing at a time to change those things. But for an organization, it can take maybe up to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 years. And I'm just some things that I do understand from diversity, equity, and inclusion and initiatives from there. So I'm going to bounce the ball back in your court, Wilnisha. What do you think about that? What are some suggestions about how organizations can begin to shift the mindset?
I definitely think that, again, like a lot of organizations that I have come across or work with, a lot of them say they have a holistic approach when dealing with clients. I think they need to practice that with employees. I understand we have a job to do. I get it. We have paperwork that needs deadlines. All of that needs to be done, but we also need to have space so folks can come in and show up with whatever they're dealing with. Because again, this is hard work. Like the work is very hard. So if we're not showing grace to the employees, then how can they possibly serve the clients at a great capacity? We need to have a restorative approach, I believe, like do some restorative circles with your team. Create that culture, that work culture that is healthy. Of course, again, like Roxy and Janet said, it's not going to be easy. We all come from different backgrounds. This human trafficking community is new. It's pretty much in its baby stages in a lot of ways. So we got a lot of things to learn. But I think that if we take a holistic approach and we bring in those things that Janice has offered us, I think that we can better work together to get to that end goal. And then also, I think that folks need to be doing their own work as well. Like we can't be telling survivors, you need to go see a therapist. We're doing case management with them. We're doing this. You need to go see a therapist. You need to find your coping skills. You need to do these things. And then those that are working with them are not doing their own work. They're not checking their own biases, their prejudices. They're not checking their own their white supremacy within themselves. It's something that we're all infected by. So we all need to check that thing and call that thing a thing, or else we're just going to perpetuate these things. And what is the thing that I've heard a lot across the nation is that survivors are being re-traumatized in the workplace it's happened to me a lot of times. But what I appreciate when I worked at Stars in San Diego was that they would give me mental health days. Like, Wilnisha, do you need to take a day off? Go ahead, take that day off. And then I appreciate too that I did work with therapists like Janice, and I was able to be like, Janice, can we do a little session? And we would record and we would do a little session, and it was very helpful. So I think we definitely need to do that, and we need to listen to survivors. Like we have to understand that we know this lifestyle and we know what it takes to get out of the lifestyle. So just listen to us. I'm not saying we have all the answers. Janice just brought in a lot of answers that I probably wouldn't have came up with. So we need to work collectively together as a team and humble ourselves.
Thank you so much, Wilnisha. That was really powerful what you said. I really appreciate that. We have another question. How can we create inclusion and equity in the workplace for survivors during COVID? How can we continue to respect survivor leaders' space and mental health during these times, especially because things are so uncertain?
Woo, that's a good question. So when COVID first hit, it was really tough for me. I had just relocated to a whole nother state. So all my tribe is all the way in California. I'm all the way on the East Coast. I had just came into a living in a new place. Then the work environment changed drastically. I have went from being with my team every day, learning. I had barely been there, 6 months, learning the environment, the work culture, then learning the environment of Washington, D.C. So it was a lot. So then having to navigate to work at home, it seemed like the organization was more so like focused on what kind of work are you doing, how are you doing it, and where are you doing it, and you need to put your time in every day. I mean, you need to put every day what you're doing and how you're doing it. It's just like, oh, we weren't even doing this in the office. And I understand, it's a little different. Folks are at home, so I get it, but it's like, it was no grace shown. It was more so like just a lot of like pressure, which really did not help me as a survivor. And there was nothing that could have prepared me for this, right? It was nothing that, none of us were prepared for COVID. None of us. I don't care how much degrees you have. I don't care how wealthy you are. I don't care about, we were not prepared. So we should, I think that folks really need to be more understanding of like survivors, even if they've been out of life for 10 years, 5 years, because things are going to pop up for all of us, right? But especially for survivors, on how to navigate within these unique times. I don't want to say they're bad times, they're just unique, right? And also like, again, thinking, I went from case management to where I would see my clients often. And that was like the icing on my cake, right? And then now I got to see them virtually, or I can't see them at all. So the dynamic of my whole position just changed. And I feel like it wasn't a lot of grace shown within that transition. So I think we need to show a lot of grace to survivor leaders as they are navigating through COVID. And understanding that, I mean, yes, grant monitors, we do, again, we have things due, but I'm sure grant monitors are being very gracious within this time as well, because this is a unique time that we all were not prepared for. Dennis, you have anything to say on it?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I appreciate, I mean, COVID was, it hit us all hard, right? And we were not expecting him from left field and whiplash, like what just happened here? And so I know it took some time to, to like even get comfortable, like, oh, it's Zoom, is it Zoom that we're doing? Okay, are we doing, like, we just, even the technicalities, like what do we do? How do we make the work that we do day to day? And how do we put that into a technology time, you know what I mean? And so I think that in itself was difficult, but in terms of how to like respect survivor leaders during these predicaments and mental health, I think that's extremely important. I think, I have some people in my agency, right? Because I'm on one program of an agency, but some people in the agency as leaders who really want people to always have their camera on and always want them like, engaging and like, let's make this as real as it can. It's not real. This is not what we're used to doing, right? And so I understand and love and appreciate y'all trying to make this as real as possible. But the reality is that it's not, right? And not everybody feels comfortable being on camera. Some people may have trauma regarding videotaping, regarding pictures, regarding cameras, right? And so why are we making people or encouraging people to turn on their cameras when we really don't know if that feels safe for them, right? And so are we actually creating a safe work environment during COVID times if we're not being sensitive to the times, right? And
their choices. We don't know what their house is like. We don't know anything.
Absolutely.
And let me also add, we are speaking about survivors within the workplace too. However, when it comes to organizational culture and changing those cultures, creating those systems, if these tactics that we're describing now are applied on a universal issue, then the impact of it all, everyone will feel it. Then we begin to create a sense of belonging for everyone. Therefore, organizations aren't squished in this box or worried about checking off a box and said, hey, I made sure this person feel included. And so, we're done here, because if that's the case, the institutional organization will continue to chase after things that will, or firefight. They will continue to go from one crisis to another crisis, as opposed to looking at the fuller picture and understanding how the impact is greater than the intent.
Yes.
So we got another question. This is a really good one. Ooh, this is a really good one. And I just wanted to throw this one out.
I'm nervous, just kidding.
Right? Me too, I'm like.
Okay. Wilnisha, someone commented, hey, I really, really appreciate your comment on colleagues coming to you and not at you.
Yes.
How do you you navigate this if someone who isn't new to the team, meaning like a leader, a manager, someone from leadership or another colleague, has a conflicting communication style, maybe passive aggressive, maybe extremely dismissive, maybe outrightly disrespectful, maybe gaslighting, all those things which we know are known forms of tactical and psychological abuse. As a survivor in that workplace who comes into a workplace, this might be a culture that's already there, what are some things that the survivors can do to protect themselves from that? What does this mean in reference to survivors' positions? I'm sorry, when it comes to positional power, for example, if a survivor is coming in and they may not share or have all the power that maybe the leader has, or the person that they answer to have, is it safe to speak up at that point? With getting blamed, shamed, or fired?
Yeah.
How does that work? I know you guys got some good stuff for us.
That's a good question. That's a tough one. I would say first, check in with yourself, right? And really assess and process what's going on. And like Janet said earlier, I'm sure you're gonna probably be triggered by it. You're gonna feel re-traumatized by it. So check in and see where you're feeling it at and handle that first. And then I would hope that you have a tribe or you have a therapist or someone that you can then again check in with too, right? And get some type of advice, because sometimes it's always good to have someone else on the outside looking in, and maybe they can see some things that possibly you can't see. You might be responding emotionally, which your emotions are very valid, but having someone else that you trust, that a mentor, you know what I'm saying, that could definitely give you that second opinion, maybe affirm you, maybe let you know like, hey, did you think of it this way? Or, you know what I'm saying, just give you that extra advice. And then if you feel safe and that rapport is built, and it's tough, right? Because you might say something to them and let them know like, hey, I think that your approach is not really healthy for me. Maybe you're gaslighting me, or maybe you're coming off like a trafficker, or you might say that, and then you might get attacked, or they might take it. It's like you just never know. But I think like as survivor leaders, for me, how I operate, and this is just my approach, I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna say what's on my heart and on my mind, because I feel like I have a duty to make sure that at least I told that person, right? Because if I didn't tell them, then they don't know. But if I tell them and one, they choose to do the work and change that thing or assess it and go through those same steps I just said, and they choose to do that and accept it, then hey, let's go. We're helping the community. But if they don't, then it just shows what kind of person they are. And then I know how to navigate and work with them. But as a survivor leader, it's my duty to say that, because it's going to be another survivor that's going to work with them. And for me, I always want to make sure that any place I touch or any environment I'm in, I'm bringing the best to the table for the next survivor, because I don't want them to ever have to go through what I've been through. So as a survivor leader, it's my duty to speak up, even if I was to get fired, even if I was to like get reprimanded for it, because I've had all the above happen within my professional experience so far as a survivor leader working in this community.
Yeah. And I want to add something to that, Wilnisha, is that we're not in control of other people's reactions, right? Yes. Sometimes we worry about, like, yes, we're in control of how we say things and what we're experiencing, right? And being able to decide, how will I share this information? But we're not in charge or in control of somebody else's reaction. We always hope that someone's reaction will be well taken to the information we share. But truth be told is that someone's reaction, whether good or bad, we're not really in control of that. We didn't cause that, right? That's their stuff, right? So also being mindful of that.
Yeah, that's a reflection of them.
100%.
Yeah, so I can't take that on, but I'm going to speak up. My voice, I have to.
Also want to add, boundaries is really important for both sides.
Yes.
One thing someone has told me, which I find really valuable on a daily basis, is boundaries are not boundaries unless they are stated and upheld.
Yes.
So if you assume survivor as well as service provider, if you assume that your boundaries are clear and then they are infringed upon, of course there will be conflict. There will be conflict, and conflict is not bad. Don't get
It's
me wrong.
not.
It's not bad. Again, it's a way that we learn. It's a way that we get to understand different perspectives, right?
Mhm.
However, if you state your boundaries, both for survivor and service provider and advocates, and stay firm with them, then all expectations become clear.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
again, Janice saying we can't control people's reactions. That people are going to gaslight you. People are going to scream and yell at you. People are going to, probably write a really nasty email, maybe even disregard your emails altogether. People are going to do that. That's the working environment. That's the culture at this point, the dominant culture that we are all working hard to kind of dismantle.
Yes.
And so with that being said, boundaries are just that,
Absolutely.
and you don't have to engage. You do not have to engage.
You could take an invitation, but you don't have to say yes.
Exactly. Protect your peace, especially in this time during the pandemic.
100%.
Yes.
Protect your peace.
And be strategic. Every fight or everything is not meant for you to fight. Like, you don't have to always fight everything. But at some point, you don't have to, but I would encourage you to speak up and speak out, because as a survivor, that's one way to gain your power back. And if you happen to lose that job, God forbid, it's okay. Everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. And I'm sure a greater door is going to be open. So don't lose hope. We've been through worse.
Yeah.
Another question. So, and I'll give some context to this question. We all know that for everyone, once trust it's hard to get, but once it's broken, it's even harder to repair.
Yes.
And when it comes to survivors within the workplace, if they're working within organizations and colleagues, leaders, and there's an issue where trust is broken, what are the next steps for both survivor and those working alongside with them? What's the next steps?
I would say, go ahead, Janice.
No, go for it.
I just want to say this one thing. If the trust is broken and both parties have talked about it, leave it there. Don't keep bringing it up, throwing it up. Like, that is not going to help at all with the survivor. Like, it's going to only continue to re-traumatize and make them feel like they're not enough, or what they're bringing to the table is not valued. So again, a holistic approach, like, leave that thing there. Let's leave it at the restorative circle. Let's leave it at the conversation in the office when that happened. And if the person is working diligently to change that behavior, then why keep bringing it up? Or remember when you got wrote up, or remember when this happened? Why are we still living in the past? Let's move forward. The same thing with the client. You wouldn't want to do that to a client. I think we need to bring into the workspace the same way we say we want to treat the clients, we need to treat each other.
Yes.
It's that simple.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this goes back to that embracing of our mistakes, embracing our differences, embracing the way that we do things. And in my ideal world, there's a psychologically safe workplace, right, in which we do feel safe to bring this up with somebody. If somebody breaks our trust or does something at us, that we feel safe enough to either go to that person themselves, or go to a supervisor, or go to anybody else that you feel safe talking this through with, right? And it's hard when people like break our trust, right? Some of us, we give trust until it's broken. Others of us, people gain our trust, right? So everybody has a different idea of what trust is and how someone gains it. But what we do know is that when it's broken, it can be really hard to get back, right? But we have to both accept that, both the person who broke the trust and the person who got their trust broken, right? We both need to accept that this is a working process now, right? Now we're in this phase where it's gonna take some time. And so being able to talk about it, figure out ways to move forward. How do we avoid this from happening again, right? How do we both avoid this mistake or this trust to be broken again? And then do we both want to work it out, right? Because sometimes we think that we need to resolve things, right? Or we try, or we want to, but maybe both parties don't want to, right? Making sure that we both want to. And then like Wilnisha said, not that we can't, not about like going back, but why? What is my intention on going back to the past, right? Is it to bring it up again? Because what happens is we break trust when we live in the past, right? And when we bring it up, it's like a constant reminder of trust being broken.
And Janice said in the beginning, trust and empowerment is vital for survivor leaders. So if you continue to bring that up, it's like, oh, you don't trust me? Like, yes.
Okay. Before we make a few more comments and questions, or send some more questions your way, guys, I just wanted to take a brief pause so that you all can put your contact information. There's a lot of people who may want to follow up with you. Let them know how you can be reached. That's
In the chat, Roxy?
in the chat, yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe you have that capability. And I'm saying this because we're getting a lot of requests for people to reach out to you. So I want to make sure that they have that as well. So do we have one more question? Here's a good one. How do service providers and institutions, what can they do to protect survivors' privacy, especially in regards to research? So, there's a thing where, research is a real thing within workplaces, especially within the anti-trafficking community. As we continue to learn how to center the voices of survivors, there's a really fine line between empowerment and re-exploitation.
Yes.
What can you give us some suggestions about how that can work? What might be some ethical ways for that to happen?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and a question that I think is a long going kind of conversation, right? Because everybody's story is so different, we don't want to exploit them, right? Sometimes, I mean, to be honest, I think sometimes even the idea of like getting an incentive for sharing your story, for participating in things, I'm like, ooh, that feels like a tit for tat type situation, feels way too like, close to home. And so I think that there are ways to do this more ethically. I think really using it as a volunteer experience or a volunteer opportunity, and really letting it be a volunteer opportunity, right? Like, I know that going through and doing research, they have their own funding sources that are asking, like, we need 100 people you need to interview, right? You need this many people. We also need a group thing. And so they have their obligations, but I don't think they need to be incentivized. I think they should be a volunteer experience. And not everybody is ready or wants to engage in research. Not everybody wants to share their story. Every time someone shares their story, it can and may be re-traumatizing, right? And we don't want that for our survivors, right? We don't want that. And yet we incentivize and try to like bribe their like attendance of a research. And so I do think that this is a bigger conversation. And whenever I don't know the answer, I lean on my experts. I lean on people who are survivors, right? How do we do this more ethically? Because I don't know the answer, right?
Yes. I remember when I first started at STARS, my first manager, she told me, Wilnisha, you don't got to share your story. You share your story at this job. You are more than your story. And that just, it set the tone for how I moved in the community. And it was just beautiful that she said that. She didn't have to say that, but she made sure to let me know, like, you're more than your story. You're more than a survivor. And every time she would talk to me, she was always giving that kind of energy. So I think that it was just so beautiful on my journey as a survivor leader, because that was the first position that I had as a survivor leader. So it was beautiful. She set that tone for me.
Yeah, one more great question. And we have about 7 minutes left for this webinar.
That was fast.
I know. I mean, I do want to just bring up and let everyone know thank you so much for coming and participating in this conversation and engaging. Your questions are really helpful. I want to speak individually, and I also speak for what I'm seeing in the chat, is that this conversation is really validating, because psychological safety is valid. Yes. Organizations love to, look out for physical safety, as we all should, but there seems to be a disconnect between physical safety and psychological safety, especially psychological safety, because it's the basis of what we need to feel safe, And with that being said, let me move on to this last question. So Janice talked about building rapport with teammates, how best to communicate, when, etc. This strongly relates to the racism of professionalism. What do you suggest is a good way for a team to identify standards of professionalism that aren't helpful or are even harmful to survivors on staff? That's an excellent question.
Yeah, and I think I don't think I will have the answer or know the answer to that, right? I think we are all of different backgrounds. And like I said, I think I'm nobody to identify what professionalism looks in somebody else's culture that's not mine. I can only really identify what professionalism looks like for me in my culture and my background and the way that I was raised, right? Because even within our cultures, even within our diversities and different races and ethnicities, even within that, there's differences, right? Race and ethnicity is such a complex and beautiful thing to really dive into. And so what's professionalism may not always look like what the white standard of professionalism is, right? And so I remember going into the workplace. I'm Cuban, so I have Latin roots, and I like wearing hoops. And I remember kind of going in as a therapist and being told that like hoops wasn't really professional to wear, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. I want to make sure that I present professionally. So guess I should wear like small studs, right? Maybe pearls of some sort. But I was like, okay, I can't wear hoops anymore. But to me, wearing hoops, and I wish I wore them today because I wear them now all the time, like it does not invalidate my professionalism, right? It's not only a sign of my culture, but something that I take with me and I take with pride and makes me feel confident working, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being at work. So I think that yes, there are some professional standards that maybe aren't helpful or even harmful, but really professional attire, speech, emailing, all that stuff may look very different race to race or ethnicity to ethnicity. And that's a conversation we should have, right? Why not bring these conversations to the table?
Yes.
Like bring them, talk about them with openness, with validation, with love, with all that, with curiosity, with healthy curiosity, right? Not just to be like, I just want to know, right? But with this healthiness to that curiosity, we should be having these conversations. So I love that question.
And then,
sorry if I don't have the answer.
Right. But then if you look at our professional, we serving survivors, they probably not gonna open up to you, to be honest. They like, oh, let me be professional too. We're trying to get to some deep rooted stuff. You want to kind of look like the people you serve. I mean, I understand Absolutely. If you got a meeting, that's different. But if you are serving some youth and survivors, just be relaxed. First thing they're going to judge you by is what you look like and what you're wearing. So if you're wearing hoop earrings, we wear hoop earrings. Today I try to be a little professional, but normally we wear hoop earrings and stuff like that. So it probably made it easier. Like, oh, she got hoop earrings on and she's a therapist? Oh yeah, I can talk to her.
Absolutely.
You're on mute, Roxy. Okay, there you go.
Wow. Okay. This has been a spirited discussion. And I almost don't want to end this.
Right?
This is great. And we have so many more questions. So for the sake of time, to respect everyone's time, I do want to address that. So if you want to forward your questions to me and I can forward them to the panelists, or I can attempt to answer them myself, I'll put my information in the chat along with our partner Survivor Alliance. And therefore you guys can reach out and we can continue to have these conversations. Before we wrap up, I also want to encourage everyone, if there's a topic that, as a survivor that you want to be brought up here, if you're a survivor leader and you want to actually be a panelist, if you have any ideas and you want to be a panelist, we invite you to come because real discussions breed real change at this point, especially when it comes to survivors within the workplace. We all want to work together. We all share the same vision of an anti-trafficking community collectively working together to ensure the safety of all, and so with that being said, we all must do our part when it comes to that and understand that change is slow and it's not linear, just like healing. Yes. So I want to thank everyone for coming to this Survivor Leadership webinar. Please, if you would like to be added to our Survivor Leadership listserv, please contact me by email and I'll definitely add you to our listserv. And if you all, Janice or Wilnisha, don't have anything else to say, unfortunately, we are at the end of our time. Do you guys have anything else to say or?
No, just thank you so much for the opportunity and thank you all for coming. And I'm just excited to see what we do collectively in this community.
Yes, agreed. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having this conversation. Thank you for your questions.
Yes.
Yes, thank you all so much.
All right, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.